You are on HOA nuisance files. The tow driver took one look and still tried to hook it. You are about to pay daily fines if you miss this deadline again. That is what Christine White yelled at me while she planted 3 orange traffic cones on my front steps and waved an invoice in my face. The cones were not for safety. They were props. She told me she was billing me $200 for the cones, $300 for the hazard posting, and $50 per day until I melted every trace of ice off my stairs. It was 7 in the morning. The temperature was 9 degrees. I had not even finished my coffee. I live in St. Petersburg, Florida, in a subdivision called Twin Oaks Landing Association. The HOA has 43 rules about snow and ice. Christine is the fines and enforcement coordinator. She brags about collections. She carries a clipboard, a tape measure, and a cheap flashlight headlamp everywhere she goes. She also carries that lanyard with vendor fobs and a gate fob, and she jingles it when she walks like it is a badge. The headlamp is her signature move. She uses it to trespass at night after snow and check for violations in the dark. I have seen her out there at 2 in the morning, shining that bright beam at mailboxes and driveways, looking for salt residue or snow piles that are 1 inch over the limit. The reason I had ice on my steps in the first place was because the temperature dropped 30 degrees overnight, and the melt from the day before froze solid. I work for the city parks department. I know permits. I know right-of-way rules. I know that a temporary handrail brace for icy stairs is not an unapproved structure, but Christine called it one anyway. She said the brace was a construction project that required architectural review. She said I installed it without approval. She said it was ugly. She said it was a liability. Then she said she was placing the cones and billing me for them, and if I touched the cones, she would add a tampering fee. I asked her to show me the rule. She pulled out her phone and started scrolling. Then she said the rule was in the winter supplement, and I should have received it in November. I told her I never got a winter supplement. She said that was my problem. I asked her when the supplement was mailed. She said she was not going to stand there and be interrogated. Then she said, I am calling management and I am going to be dramatic about it. She said it exactly like that, word for word. That was her catchphrase. She used it every time someone pushed back. I did not argue. I already had something in my pocket she did not know about. I had been building a file on Christine for 3 weeks. I had tow dispatch logs. I had call recordings. I had an invoice trail showing bogus legal fees were added without authorization. I was not ready to use it yet, but I knew it was there. So I just nodded and let her talk. She kept going. She said the board would back her because they were afraid of her. She said it with a smile. She actually smiled when she said it. That line stuck with me. I knew I would hear it again. The stakes were real. My car was parked in my driveway. I needed that car to get to work. The city does not do remote work for parks employees. If Christine towed my car, I would miss shifts. I would lose pay. I might lose my job. She knew that. She had already threatened to send collections even though the fees were disputed and under appeal. The HOA set a cure deadline that landed right before a forecasted blizzard. I had 72 hours to remove the handrail brace, clear all ice, and submit a compliance photo. If I missed the deadline, the fines would go to collections, and the HOA could put a lien on my house. Christine told me all of this while standing on my steps with her cones. She said it like she was reading me a grocery list. After she left, I went inside and pulled out the file. I had started the file 3 weeks earlier when my gate access glitched. The glitch happened the exact moment I pushed back on a previous fine. I had gotten a notice about snow pile placement. The notice said my snow pile was 6 inches too close to the curb. I measured it. It was not. I sent photos to the management company. 2 hours later, my gate fob stopped working. I called the management office. They said it was a system error. They said they would fix it. They did not fix it. I had to park on the street for a week. When I finally got my fob reactivated, I filed a complaint. Christine sent me a letter saying the complaint was frivolous and I was being charged a $50 processing fee. That was when I started digging. I pulled HOA records from the county. I pulled vendor contracts. I pulled board meeting minutes. I found something interesting. The management company had been adding legal fees to homeowner accounts without authorization. The fees were small, $20 to $60, and they were always labeled as compliance research or document preparation. But the invoices did not match the work. I cross-referenced the invoice dates with the board minutes. Half the invoices were dated on days when no board meetings happened. Some were dated on holidays. One was dated Christmas Day. The management company was padding bills, and Christine was signing off on them. I also found something else. The tow vendor contract had expired. The HOA had been using the same tow company for 3 years, but the contract lapsed in October. The company was still enforcing tows, but they were doing it on bluff. They had no legal authority. Christine did not know that. Or maybe she did, and she did not care. Either way, it was leverage. The day after Christine planted the cones, the HOA plow came through. The plow left ice chunks all over my driveway. Big ones. Some were the size of basketballs. Christine knocked on my door at 6 in the morning and demanded I break them up immediately. She said the chunks were a pedestrian hazard. I pointed out that the HOA plow left the chunks. She said that was irrelevant. She said the homeowner is responsible for all ice on their property regardless of origin. She said it was in the rules. I asked her to show me. She said she already showed me yesterday. I said no, you scrolled on your phone and said it was in a supplement I never received. She said, I am calling management and I am going to be dramatic about it. Then she walked away. I spent the next hour breaking up ice chunks with a shovel. My hands were numb. My back hurt. I was late for work. When I got to the city parks office, my supervisor asked me what happened. I told him. He shook his head. He said HOAs in St. Petersburg were out of control. He said he dealt with them all the time because they would call the city and complain about trees that were not on city property. He said they would demand the city trim branches that hung over their sidewalks even though the sidewalks were private. He told me to document everything. He said if it got worse, I should file a complaint with the state. That night, I got a certified letter. The envelope had snow-wet corners. The paper inside was damp. The letter said I was being fined $500 for failure to remove a hazardous structure within 24 hours. The hazardous structure was the handrail brace. The letter said the fine was immediate and non-appealable. It said if I did not pay within 10 days, the HOA would place a lien on my house and pursue foreclosure. It was signed by Christine White, Fines and Enforcement Coordinator. I called the management company the next morning. I asked to speak to someone about the fine. The receptionist put me on hold for 20 minutes. When someone finally picked up, it was not a manager, it was an assistant. She said the fine was valid. I asked her to explain how a temporary safety brace could be classified as a hazardous structure. She said she did not have that information. I asked to see the winter supplement. She said she would email it. She never did. If you are enjoying this story, hit that like button and subscribe for more HOA nightmare tales. I decided to take my supervisor's advice. I filed a state procedure complaint with the Florida Department of Business and Professional Regulation. The complaint outlined the unauthorized fees, the expired tow contract, and the inconsistent rule enforcement. I included copies of the invoice trail and the tow dispatch logs. I also included photos of the handrail brace and the ice chunks the plow left. The complaint forced the HOA to respond within 30 days. I knew Christine would not like that. I also knew it would make her escalate. She did. 2 days later, I got a notice that my car was going to be towed. The notice said my vehicle was parked illegally in my own driveway. It said the driveway was not compliant with winter storage rules. I had no idea what that meant. I called the management company again. This time I got a manager. His name was Paul. Paul said the winter storage rule required all vehicles to be parked in garages during snow events. I told him I did not have a garage. He said that was unfortunate. I asked him when this rule was implemented. He said he would have to check. He never called back. The tow was scheduled for midnight. I knew because I had been tracking the tow company dispatch through a friend who worked for a competitor. My friend told me the tow company was getting nervous about the expired contract. He said they were asking for proof of authorization before every job. That gave me an idea. I set up my phone to record the driveway. Then I waited. Christine showed up at 11:45. She was wearing her white puffer coat and her lanyard. She had the cheap flashlight headlamp strapped to her forehead. She walked up to my car and shined the beam at my camera. She held it there for a full minute. Then the tow truck pulled up. The driver got out. Christine handed him a piece of paper. The driver read it. Then he looked at my car. Then he looked at Christine. He said something I could not hear. Christine pointed at the paper. The driver shook his head. Christine pulled out her phone. The driver walked back to his truck. Christine followed him. They argued for 5 minutes. Then the driver got in his truck and left. Christine stood in my driveway for another 10 minutes, shining her headlamp at my car. Then she left too. I watched the video the next morning. The audio was clear. Christine had told the driver he had authorization from the board. The driver asked for a signed work order. Christine said she was the work order. The driver said he needed documentation. Christine said, "I am calling management and I am going to be dramatic about it." The driver said he was not hooking the car without proper authorization. Then he left. It was perfect. I saved the video. The next day, I got a knock on my door. It was not Christine, it was a neighbor. His name was Dan. Dan lived 3 houses down. He was quiet. He kept to himself. He said he needed to talk to me. I let him in. He sat down at my kitchen table and said, "This happened to me too." He said Christine had targeted him last winter. She had fined him for snow pile placement, ice on his mailbox, and failure to salt his driveway within 6 hours of a snowfall. He said the fines added up to $2,000. He said he paid them because he was afraid of losing his house. Then he said he found out later that half the fines were bogus. He said other homeowners had the same experience. He said Christine had been doing this for years. He said the board knew. He said they were afraid of her. Dan told me he had been gathering evidence too. He had emails from other homeowners. He had photos of inconsistent enforcement. He had a spreadsheet tracking every fine Christine had issued in the past 2 years. He said Christine targeted people who worked full-time jobs and could not attend board meetings. He said she avoided retirees and stay-at-home parents because they had time to fight back. He said I was her type. Young, busy, easy to intimidate. He said he wanted to help. He said if I was willing to fight, he would back me up. I told him about the state complaint. He smiled. He said that was exactly what we needed. The blizzard hit 3 days later. It was bad. 12 inches of snow in 18 hours. The power went out. The roads were undrivable. The HOA plow did not come through until the 3rd day. When it finally did, it left a wall of snow at the end of every driveway. My wall was 4 feet high. I spent 2 hours clearing it. When I finished, Christine was standing at the curb. She had her clipboard. She said I cleared the snow into the street. I told her I cleared it onto the curb where the plow left it. She said that was the same as the street. She said I was being fined $300 for illegal snow disposal. I said I wanted to see the rule. She said it was in the winter supplement. I said I never received the winter supplement and I wanted proof it was mailed. She said, I am calling management and I am going to be dramatic about it. I did not argue. I went inside and called Dan. I told him what happened. He said he would make some calls. 2 hours later, my phone rang. It was a number I did not recognize. I answered. It was a woman named Lisa. Lisa said she was on the HOA board. She said she heard about my complaint. She said she wanted to talk. I asked her if this was official. She said no. She said it was off the record. She said Christine did not know she was calling. She said the board was nervous. She said the state complaint was a problem. She said if the state found irregularities, the management company could lose their license. She said the board was considering an audit. She asked me if I would be willing to hold off on the complaint if they did an audit. I said no. I said the complaint was filed and it was moving forward. She said she understood. Then she said something that surprised me. She said, "The board is not backing Christine anymore. We are afraid of her, but we are more afraid of the state." That was the crack I needed. The board was splitting. Christine's power was slipping. But I knew she would not go quietly. I knew she would escalate one more time. I was right. The next morning, I got a notice that the HOA was scheduling an emergency hearing to discuss my violations. The hearing was set for 2 days later. The notice said I was required to attend. It said if I did not attend, the fines would be assessed automatically and a lien would be placed on my house within 10 days. It said I could bring documentation, but I could not bring a lawyer. It said the hearing would be recorded, but the recording would not be available to homeowners. It was signed by Christine White. I called Dan. I told him about the hearing. He said he would come. He said he would bring the spreadsheet. He also said he knew 2 other homeowners who had been targeted by Christine. He said they would come too. I asked him if they were willing to speak. He said yes. He said they were done being quiet. I said good. Then I called my supervisor at the city parks department. I asked him if the city had any records of HOA complaints about private trees or sidewalks in Twin Oaks Landing. He said he would check. He called me back an hour later. He said the city had 12 complaints in the past year, all filed by Christine White. He said every single complaint was invalid because the trees and sidewalks were on private property, not city property. He said Christine knew that because the city had sent her written responses explaining jurisdiction. He said she filed the complaints anyway. He emailed me copies. The day before the hearing, I went to the management company office. It was in a strip mall 20 minutes away. The office was small. There were 3 desks and a receptionist. I walked up to the receptionist and said I needed to see the winter policy. She said she would have to check with Paul. She left. 5 minutes later, Paul came out. He was a short man in his 50s with a bad comb-over. He said the winter policy was not available. I asked why. He said it was proprietary. I said that did not make sense. I said HOA rules had to be disclosed to homeowners. He said the winter policy was not a rule, it was a guideline. I said that was not what Christine told me. He said Christine was interpreting the guidelines. I said I wanted to see the guidelines. He said he could not provide them without board approval. I asked when the board would approve it. He said he did not know. I said I was filing a formal request under Florida statute. He said I could not do that because the statute did not apply to guidelines. I said we would see. Then, I left. That night, Christine called me. She said she heard I went to the management office. She said that was harassment. I said I was requesting documents I was legally entitled to. She said I was not entitled to anything. She said the hearing was tomorrow and I better be ready. I said I would be there. She said, the board will back me because they are afraid of me. I did not respond. I just hung up. I knew that line was about to come back and bite her. The hearing was held in the clubhouse at 6 in the evening. The clubhouse was a small building near the entrance gate. It had one main room with folding tables and metal chairs. When I arrived, Christine was already there. She had her clipboard, her tape measure, and her cheap flashlight headlamp sitting on the table in front of her. The board was there too. 3 people. Lisa, the woman who called me, and 2 men I did not recognize. Dan was there. The 2 other homeowners were there. There were also 5 other people I did not know. Neighbors. They came to watch. Christine started. She said I had violated 4 HOA rules: snow pile placement, hazardous structure, illegal snow disposal, and failure to comply with winter storage. She said the total fines were $1,300. She said if I did not pay within 10 days, the HOA would place a lien and pursue foreclosure. She said she had photos and documentation. She pulled out a binder. It was bigger than mine. She laid it on the table and opened it. The photos were bad. They were taken at night with her headlamp. Everything was overexposed and washed out. You could barely see what she was pointing at. She went through them one by one. She pointed at my handrail brace. She pointed at the snow pile. She pointed at the ice chunks. She said they were all violations. She said the rules were clear. When she finished, I stood up. I said I had documentation too. I pulled out my tabbed binder. I opened it. I said I had 3 things to share. First, the handrail brace was a temporary safety measure installed in response to an ice hazard. I showed photos of the ice. I showed the brace. I said it was not a structure, it was a safety device, and under Florida Building Code, temporary safety devices do not require permits. Christine interrupted. She said Florida Building Code did not apply to HOA rules. I said that was incorrect. I said HOA rules could not override state law. She said the board would decide that. Lisa, the board member, said, "Actually, he is right." Christine glared at her. I continued. I said the snow pile was placed exactly where the HOA plow left the snow. I showed photos. I showed the timeline. I said I cleared the snow from my driveway onto the curb, which was the only place it could go. I said the HOA plow then pushed the snow back into a pile, and Christine fined me for the pile the plow created. Christine said that was irrelevant. She said homeowners were responsible for all snow on their property. I said that was not what the rules said. I pulled out the HOA covenant. I read the section on snow removal. It said homeowners were required to clear walkways and driveways within 24 hours of snowfall. It said nothing about snow piles. It said nothing about curb placement. Christine said the winter supplement clarified it. I said I never received the winter supplement, and I had requested it multiple times. I asked Paul, the management company rep, if he had a copy. He said he did not have one with him. I asked when it was mailed. He said he would have to check. I said I already checked. I said I pulled the HOA mailing records from the county. I said there was no record of a winter supplement being mailed in November or any other month in the past 2 years. Paul looked at Christine. Christine looked at the board. Lisa said, "Is that true?" Paul said he would have to verify. Then I dropped the trump card. I said I had one more thing. I pulled out the invoice trail. I said the management company had been adding unauthorized legal fees to homeowner accounts. I said the fees were small, usually $20 to $60, and they were always labeled as compliance research or document preparation. I said the invoices did not match the work. I said half the invoices were dated on days when no board meetings happened. I said one was dated Christmas Day. I said I cross-referenced the invoice dates with the board minutes and found at least 37 invoices that did not correspond to any board activity. I said Christine had signed off on all of them. I laid the invoices on the table. I said I was requesting that the evidence be read into the minutes so it becomes official. Lisa picked up the invoices. She looked at them. Then she looked at Christine. She said, "Did you authorize these?" Christine said she did not remember. Lisa said, "You signed them." Christine said she signed a lot of things. Lisa said, "These are fraudulent charges." Christine said that was a serious accusation. Lisa said, "Yes, it is." Dan stood up. He said he had evidence too. He said Christine had targeted him last winter with bogus fines. He said he paid them because he was afraid. He said he later found out other homeowners had the same experience. He pulled out his spreadsheet. He said Christine had issued over 100 fines in the past 2 years. He said 80% of the fines were against homeowners who worked full-time jobs. He said Christine avoided retirees and stay-at-home parents. He said the pattern was clear. Christine was targeting people who could not fight back. One of the other homeowners stood up. She said Christine had fined her for ice on her mailbox. She said the ice was from the HOA plow spray. She said she paid the fine because Christine threatened to tow her car. Another homeowner stood up. He said the same thing happened to him. He said Christine told him the board would back her because they were afraid of her. Lisa looked at Christine. She said, "Did you say that?" Christine said she did not recall. The homeowner said, "I have it in an email." He pulled out his phone. He showed Lisa. Lisa read it. Her face went white. The room was silent. Then Lisa said, "This hearing is over." She said the fines were suspended pending an audit. She said the management company would be notified that all enforcement actions were frozen until the audit was complete. She said Christine was being removed from the fines and enforcement coordinator position effective immediately. Christine stood up. She said, "You cannot do that." Lisa said, "We just did." Christine said, "The board will back me because they are afraid of me." Lisa said, "Not anymore." Christine grabbed her clipboard and her headlamp and walked out. She slammed the door. The room stayed silent for a minute. Then Lisa said, "I am sorry." She said the board had failed to oversee Christine. She said they were afraid of conflict. She said that was not an excuse. She said the audit would start immediately and all affected homeowners would be refunded. 2 weeks later, the state sent an auditor. The auditor spent 3 days reviewing records. The auditor found that Christine had been adding unauthorized fees to homeowner accounts for 4 years. The auditor found that the management company had been complicit. The auditor found that the tow vendor contract had expired, and the HOA had been threatening tows without legal authority. The auditor found that the winter supplement did not exist. Christine had been enforcing rules she made up. The auditor submitted a report to the state. The state forwarded the report to the board. The board held an emergency meeting. They voted to terminate the management company immediately. They voted to remove Christine from the board and ban her from holding any HOA position in the future. They voted to refund all fines Christine had issued in the past 2 years. They voted to hire an interim manager to oversee compliance until a new management company could be found. The interim manager was a woman named Carol. Carol was competent. She sent an email to all homeowners within 2 days of being hired. The email said all winter enforcement was frozen until the HOA compliance process was audited and cleaned up. The email said the audit would take 6 weeks. The email said affected homeowners would receive refund checks within 30 days. The email said Christine White had been removed from all HOA duties and would no longer have access to homeowner records or vendor accounts. The email said the board was implementing new oversight procedures to prevent future abuse. Carol also sent a personal email to me. She said she reviewed my file. She said all fines were voided. She said the handrail brace was approved retroactively as a temporary safety measure. She said I would receive a full refund within 2 weeks. She apologized on behalf of the board. I got my refund check 3 weeks later. It was for $1,300. Dan got his check too. It was for $2,000. The other homeowners got theirs. The total refunds exceeded $50,000. The management company tried to fight the termination. They sent a lawyer. The lawyer sent a letter threatening to sue the board for breach of contract. The board sent the letter to the state auditor. The state auditor responded with a letter outlining the management company's violations. The management company dropped the lawsuit. They also lost their license. Carol said it was the fastest license revocation she had ever seen. Christine tried to spin it. She sent an email to the neighborhood group chat. She said the board had overreacted. She said the audit was politically motivated. She said she was being scapegoated. She said she had always acted in the best interest of the community. She said she was considering legal action. Nobody responded. The group chat stayed silent. Then Dan posted a screenshot of Christine's email where she said the board would back her because they were afraid of her. He posted it without comment. Christine left the group chat. She stopped attending board meetings. She stopped walking around the neighborhood with her clipboard and her headlamp. I saw her once, 2 months later, getting into her car. She did not look at me. She just got in and drove away. The final piece came 3 months later. I got a call from a reporter. The reporter said she was writing a story about HOA abuse in Florida. She said she heard about Twin Oaks Landing. She asked if I would talk. I said yes. The story ran 2 weeks later. It was front page in the local section. It included quotes from Dan, from the other homeowners, and from Carol, the interim manager. It included excerpts from the state audit. It included a photo of Christine's binder with the bad photos. The story was titled, HOA Enforcement Coordinator Removed After Years of Bogus Fines. Christine did not comment. The board issued a statement. The statement said they were committed to transparency and accountability. The statement said they had implemented new policies to prevent future abuse. The statement said they were grateful to the homeowners who came forward. The HOA hired a new management company. The new company was professional. They sent clear policies. They sent a real winter supplement. The supplement was 2 pages long. It had clear rules. It had clear deadlines. It had a clear appeals process. It did not include anything about snow pile placement or winter storage. Carol stayed on as an advisor for 6 months. She helped the new company transition. She also helped the board update the covenants. The updated covenants included limits on fines, mandatory appeals processes, and prohibitions on unauthorized enforcement. The covenants passed by a vote of the membership. Christine did not vote. I kept the tabbed binder. I also kept the invoices, the tow dispatch logs, and the call recordings. I kept them in a file box in my closet. I did not need them anymore, but I wanted them. They were proof. Proof that I fought back. Proof that I won. Proof that you can beat an HOA if you document everything and stay calm. I also kept one of the orange traffic cones. I use it as a doorstop. Every time I see it, I remember Christine standing on my steps at 7 in the morning, waving an invoice and threatening me with daily fines. I remember her saying, "The board will back me because they are afraid of me." I remember her walking out of the hearing with her clipboard and her headlamp, slamming the door. I remember the silence that followed. That silence was the sound of her power breaking. Dan and I stayed in touch. We became friends. He said the neighborhood felt different after Christine left. He said people were not afraid anymore. He said homeowners were attending board meetings. He said the new management company was responsive. He said it felt like a real community again. I agreed. I also noticed something else. The cheap flashlight headlamp stopped appearing at night. Nobody was prowling around checking for violations. Nobody was measuring snow piles at 2 in the morning. The neighborhood was quiet. It was normal. It was what it should have been all along. The blizzard that hit right before the cure deadline turned out to be the last big storm of the season. Spring came early. The snow melted fast. The ice disappeared. The handrail brace stayed up through March, then I took it down. The steps were dry. They were safe. I did not need the brace anymore. I stored it in the garage. I figured I might need it again next winter. But next winter, there was no Christine. There was no harassment. There was no midnight tow attempt. There was just snow, and a clear policy, and a management company that responded to emails. It was boring. It was exactly what I wanted. I still work for the City Parks Department. I still know permits and right-of-way rules. I still see HOAs overreach and try to enforce rules that do not exist. But now I know how to fight them. I know how to document. I know how to file complaints. I know how to read invoices and contracts. I know how to find the weak spots. I know how to stay calm and let the evidence do the work. I also know that most HOAs are not like Christine. Most are just trying to keep the neighborhood nice. But when you get a Christine, when you get someone who abuses the system and targets people for profit, you have to fight back. You have to stand up. You have to document everything. You have to file the complaints. You have to show up at the hearings. You have to make them defend their actions in writing. Because once you do that, once you force them to produce the evidence and explain the rules, the whole thing falls apart. And when it falls apart, you win. The state procedure complaint was the key. It forced the HOA to respond. It brought in the auditor. It exposed the management company. It gave the board the cover they needed to remove Christine. Without that complaint, I would have paid the fines. I would have lost my car. I might have lost my house. The complaint cost me nothing. It took an hour to fill out the form. It was worth it. If you are dealing with an HOA that is abusing the system, file the complaint. Do not wait. Do not assume the board will fix it. Do not assume the management company will do the right thing. File the complaint. Let the state force them to respond. Let the audit reveal the truth. It works. Christine moved out of Twin Oaks Landing 6 months after the audit. I heard she bought a condo in a building with no HOA. I also heard she tried to get elected to the condo board and got voted down. I do not know if that is true. I do not care. She is gone. The neighborhood is better without her. The fines stopped. The harassment stopped. The midnight tow attempts stopped. The cheap flashlight headlamp stopped. It was over. And it felt good. Glad you stayed for the whole story.